Good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to our first ever career fair by the NAC. I want to give you all a warm welcome to all of our friends and colleagues in the arts who are joining us both on Zoom here, as well as anybody that is joining us live on our Facebook page, which is being streamed. Welcome to you all, and thank you so much for taking the time to be part of, as I said, the first ever career fair by the NAC, which is an event that we hope to host on an annual basis. By way of introduction, my name apologies about that. MK, please could you call Kiriboni, who's calling me at the moment? Apologies about that.
Right. I'm trying to call them.
By way of introduction, my name is Khonze Mathabate, and I work in the Marketing and Communications Unit here at the NAC, and I will be facilitating today's conversation, which I hope will be a fruitful and informative conversation that will enlighten us all about the different career opportunities and pathways that are available to us in the arts sector. Today's career fair was developed as part of NAC's broader campaign about creating awareness about the vast career opportunities available in the arts, culture, and heritage sectors. And as you, I'm sure, have all noticed, we started a campaign across all of our social media platforms in October in commemoration of Career Guidance Month. As you also all know, Stats South Africa came up with some really grim statistics about the official unemployment rate amongst young people, which has increased by 46.3% in the first quarter of 2021. That's a really grim outlook. But we at the NAC believe that the arts sector, which contributes over 63 billion rands a year, can play a significant role in the fight against unemployment. And that's why we're having this conversation today. As you all have, I'm sure, noticed as well, we've also in the month of November have also started a campaign in celebration and in commemoration of Disability Rights Awareness Month, also known as DRAM. And in today's career fair, we also hope to look at the ways that our sector can be more inclusive to people with disabilities, because we at the NAC believe that improving access to arts and culture for all people, including people with disabilities, is a really good thing to do, and it will provide opportunities for all creatives and cultural practitioners. And with that short introduction, I have some few housekeeping rules that I'd like to get into, and then we can get into the meat of today's conversation. We'll be together for approximately 2 hours, and in the first 15 or so minutes, I'll start with an introduction section of our program, where I'll be introducing each of our esteemed panelists, who include thought leaders, industry experts, business leaders, artists, and performers from the creative arts. And after the short introduction, we'll go into a more conversational segment of today's program, where I'll be engaging our esteemed panelists on how they are building and maintaining or sustaining a career in the arts. This conversation will take most of today's programming. And then towards the end of our program, we'll open up the session we'll open up the floor to all of our guests who are joining us both on Zoom and on Facebook, where we can take questions from all of you. I'll be taking raised hands. I'll also be taking any questions that are posed here on the Q&A and chat feature, and any comments that come through on our Facebook page. So while we're going through the conversation, if you have any comments and any questions, I ask you, our audience, to definitely bring in your input as we go on. Now, we'll go straight into the introduction. If you could just allow me an opportunity to share our presentation for today. I'm hoping you can all see my screen. Let me go into full screen mode. Sorry about that. Okay. So another warm welcome to our esteemed panelists and all of our guests. Thank you so much for joining us. And I will start by introducing all of our panelists, starting with the first one, Clement Mlea, who's a social entrepreneur and founder of Light of a Nation Youth Project. He's the pioneer behind Handicapped Art Festival Alive project for artists living with disabilities, which is an annual craft exhibition for creative people living with disabilities. I want to give you, Clement Mlea, a warm welcome and thank you so much for being with us and for joining us today. And we look forward to hearing more about the important work that you do as a social entrepreneur. The second panelist who is joining us today is Erica de Grief, who is a fashion curator, an academic, and one of the co-founders of the African Research Institute. She holds a PhD in African Studies from the University of Cape Town, and she has also is a board member on the Research Collective for Decolonizing Fashion and the International Journal for Fashion Studies. A warm welcome to you, Erica, and thank you so much for being with us today, and we look forward to hearing more from you. What we'll also be doing as part of the introduction is that some of our panelists have presented or are giving us short presentations about some of the work that they're doing. And we'll, as we go into each introduction, each panelist who has a presentation will give a short 5 to 10 minute presentation of their work, and then we'll continue on with the rest of the presentations. So I want to allow you, Erica, in this moment, we're going to go into your presentation, which is the next slide that we see over here. And please do indicate to me when you want me to move to the next slide and when you're ready.
Oh, thank you so much, Conce, and thank you for the National Arts Council for this opportunity to really think about fashion. So if you want to go to the next slide. The African Fashion Research Institute was really founded in 2019. I think career opportunities, perhaps that's where this set of slides that I've just really put together very quickly goes into kind of.
Apologies, Erica, I'm just checking if it's just me, but your sound is quite vague. Is it possible that you could just raise your voice or come closer to your device?
I can, if that's any better.
Yes, that's much better. Thank you.
So thank you so much. Thank you. So I think the idea that we are really looking at fashion more broadly. So thank you so much to the National Arts Council for this invitation. And to give you a bit of a background to the African Fashion Research Institute. So very often there's a very limited understanding of what fashion or a career in fashion could be. So if you want to go to the next slide, the African Fashion Research Institute was founded following the work that we did at the Zayat Museum of Contemporary African Art. And it was founded by myself and Lasipa Mabitsela, who will be sharing some information about his own work later. So we founded the African Fashion Research Institute as an outcome of thinking about fashion beyond just design. So its importance in how do we understand fashion and what kind of careers can come out of fashion. So the idea of fashion exhibitions or fashion curation is a very important one. And if you go to the next slide, the kind of ideas that come through from not just exhibitions, but the bigger story, so storytelling around fashion. And the reason why we founded the African Fashion Research Institute is there's such a lack of story around and a lack of history around African fashion. So there's a real gap in the history books, there's a gap in the museums, there's a gap in media, and the opportunities that we're seeing now in terms of the digital space, the digital storytelling. So this was a virtual exhibition where we took an exhibition that would not have been shared by African audiences and brought the exhibition to African audiences through the digital. So an important component of fashion is also about storytelling, so that's media, journalism, writing, interviews, and many more other aspects around storytelling. If you go to the next slide, I'm really just trying to give a very broad overview, and thank you so much for allowing us to just share some of our work. The next
Erica, your sound has just cut out again.
Sorry.
There you go, you're back now.
Phone call.
Okay.
The next area of fashion is around fashion education, and there's so little education focused on African fashion. So how do we start to think about imparting different kinds of knowledges around African fashion? So this was an online course that we convened. So also around fashion education, what's happening in fashion schools, or what kind of stories around African fashion are being reproduced or made accessible. So creating new knowledge around African fashion. So if you go to the next slide. Some of the work that I think is a really important work is how do we start to think about African fashion in relation to a much broader conversation around colonialism and the European ideas of fashion. So to rethink and to decolonize fashion conversations is an incredibly important part. And I think it extends not just in fashion, but it extends to interior design, jewelry design, fine arts, any kinds of creative fields around decolonizing aesthetics, decolonizing the conversation. So this particular project, Lesiba might talk to this a little bit further, but it's about decolonizing the suit. How do we think beyond the Western suit? How do we think around identities beyond sort of, and fashion particularly, beyond a Western idea? So the next slide. It kind of continues with the project around suits and suit making. So how do we think about fashion and production of fashion? So we're very aware that the Western Cape employed a lot of people in the fashion industry. And with the imports, there was a real turnaround and loss of jobs. So this particular project was around a cutting room and these kind of lost stories or lost histories of making in South Africa. So the importance of the legacy or the archive of African fashion manufacturing, production, careers, and opportunities that lie in there as well. I think there's just one more slide. And that's just a very sort of very quick overview of, you know, the way in which we have been working, and that is collaboratively. So I think the idea of thinking about careers is about creating opportunities with different minded individuals, not only just in your own discipline, but across discipline. So working with people in education, in cultural entrepreneurship, in media, in film. So expanding the idea or the possibilities of fashion. So I really don't want to take too much time. So thank you so much. I think the last slide is just a little bit about our media handles. Thank you so much, Khonze.
Thank you so much, Erica, for that insightful presentation on the work that you do alongside Lesiba at the African Fashion Research Institute. And with that, I will jump straight into introducing Lesiba, who is a South African interdisciplinary artist and fashion designer, whose avant-garde design house, Lesiba Mabisela Studio, is known for creating signature design codes consisting of transformable garments, asymmetrical silhouettes, and forms of drapery reinterpreted from the African continent and its diaspora. And with that, Lesiba, I want to give you a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. You will also be giving us a short presentation of the work that you do. So over to you, Lesiba.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's an honor to be able to share what I've done so far, to be able to be considered as part of this panel. So yeah, let's kind of get going with the work. Maybe go to the next slide. Just a short introduction of what or who I am. And also, I guess in a way, with the presentation style, it's kind of just, well, with my artwork, the idea is to kind of just break the mold of what or how we usually tend to present ourselves. And so one of it is being panelists these days. And so, you know, I try and be very frank in terms of how I got into the arts and what I like to do and what type of work that I like to do. You can go to the next slide as well. So just to give you a little bit of a rundown, I thought I'd start with some of my performance works that I began with in maybe 2013, 14. As a fashion designer coming from Tshwane, or rather Tshwane University of Technology, I went to Cape Town to study under world-renowned designer Gavin Raja. But in that process, I got into meeting a large component of the art sector within Cape Town. And so my work quite seamlessly like transformed from what was specifically only for fashion design into the realms of performance art. And it was specifically with my use of blankets. The gray blanket was the first interaction that I worked with, which I haven't necessarily provided in this presentation, but that was my introduction to the scene or the art world. From then, the blanket kind of grew into other interpretations. The next slide will kind of give you that metamorphosis into how blankets could tell stories. And so this work was called The Man with the Green Blanket. And obviously this was referencing the Maracana Massacre. Zineni Mamushnoki was the character who I had thought to lift from the concrete, if I have to say it in that sort of way, due to the stencils which were kind of found their way sparsely sort of placed around the city of Cape Town by Stokolo Stencils, which is a collective. And I thought to kind of bring into a collective sort of moment during the Infecting the City Arts Festival to bring the stencil out of the walls and engage with individuals on the streets in a public performance. And that's where part of the whole idea of the blanket also started to kind of be, you know, incorporated into the work, but also how the fashion design kind of came through into the work. Because in some senses, I always looked at how fashion shows were. These days are more site specific, but you know, there's this idea of walk, but how walking can be transformed in different sort of ways, how collections could be presented in different sorts of ways, and two different sorts of people, I thought was really interesting. If you can go to the next slide. So my next slide kind of culminates with my master's research in theater and performance at UCT. This particular show was called, or this work was called Black Tie, Missionary Possession, which kind of now internalized what the blanket meant to me as a growing man. And so suits became a very interesting indicator in how I was trying to translate these ideas of masculinities, but also beyond that, the idea of how culture and Black masculine culture has kind of found its way intertwined with foreign ideologies, and the idea of a suit being worn after initiation ceremonies was something that I was interrogating as I grew up as or rather, because I grew up as a devout Christian. I was a altar server when I was younger. So some of these things start to kind of come through and work with the work that I had already started with the blankets, and how interesting how the blankets had been started to shift and form into different sorts of ways. But I would even say this is probably where the start of my inquiries into suits and tailoring as a profession had started as well. If you can go to the next slide. So within that space, I also started to work with the digital work, so how the digital could be incorporated into performance art specifically. So the work that I showed previously, I did a 360-degree recording of the performance as it was done at the Slave Lodge in Cape Town. Obviously, just trying to expand different ways in how audiences can interact with site-specific performances, and not necessarily, if you're not there, you don't get to engage in the performance, but also it's important how you present or how you engage in the performance. And I felt that because specifically I was talking to issue, or rather, I was also playing around with the seating arrangement. That was a really important sort of layer. But to cut that short, that kind of started my whole inquiry into digital projects and how we could create digital worlds, or how we could use digital means to portray our artworks. And that kind of landed into the next few artworks. But I think the next slide will kind of look at the last work that I kind of touched on, which Erica had already touched on as well, which was called the Cutting Room Project. And I think she's kind of given us a little bit of a background to the idea of what the Cutting Room Project was. But it's centered around the cutting room within the former True Form building. And the work kind of spoke to Ilse Wolf's work as well, regarding unstitching Rex True Form, but it was looking at how suits was central to this idea of oppression between my thesis and her research into how the construction of Rex True Form was. And so with the next couple of slides, it kind of looks at how these constructions are displayed in a way that kind of speaks to the art of tailoring as well. But what I also really started to kind of work with was this idea of process. And so the storyboard is kind of becoming a larger sort of area that I'm trying to explore in the work. And the next slide basically is obviously work that Eric has spoken to a little bit of, but I think that's where also where the digital idea started, where the idea that digital could be a space for archiving. This preceded the Cutting Room Project, and so obviously those are ideas that we carried through starting from this project as well. Next slide. And so now I'm also starting to think about performance-based interventions. And so I think Erica was also mentioned beforehand, but whilst we were at Salzburg, we were doing I kind of curated or conceptualized the idea of Reinstitute, which was actually a collection, capsule collection, which I had done in my master's thesis here, but actually there was no space for it in a weird way. But it was interesting in how it navigated, or it migrated towards my working sort of environment. And obviously we were questioning the idea of Salzburg, which you could see in the next slide, the people who used to work with me in Salzburg are addressed. And so we occupied a room in Salzburg. The idea was to question this idea of this validity of Salzburg being an African cultural sort of institution, and where the words kind of are emblazoned our performance and how we dress fails us. And you know, in those areas, this is where we're now starting to think about fashion as a critical source of inquiry, because there's a lot of theory being written out there around decoloniality, but clothes are a very strong, vivid reminder of where we come from, where we are, and what has been influenced into our lives. And the idea that maybe there was a sense of bringing back style characteristics that came before colonialism into a contemporary idea of uniformity that would create that sort of spectacle on the day. So yeah, I engaged with the staff, my fellow staff, as I worked at Salzburg as well with Erica. And then the next slide, you could probably see them as well. And that's where I was kind of working with the idea of suits and expanding it into different narratives. And so, yeah, just a little bit about myself. You can see the handles there. And yeah, if you guys want to know a little bit more about me, you can check.
Thank you so much, Lisiba, for that insightful presentation. I'm going to skip through these slides if that's okay.
That's good. That's good. So I left it at the end.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Lisiba, for that presentation. We'll now move on to our next panelist, who is Xotelwa Mashita, who is a researcher and independent curator, who is currently completing a Master's of Arts in History with a specialization in advanced issues in museum and heritage studies and visual history at the University of the Western Cape. She's curated a number of exhibitions, which are listed here in her biography. And I want to give you, Xotelwa, a really, really warm welcome. And I look forward to hearing your insights as a curator and from within the visual arts community.
Thank you, Khunze.
Our next panelist is Julie Johnson, who is the founder and executive director of Zikhulise Community Upliftment Project. And her organization, Zikhulise, is a non-profit organization based in Empangeni, KwaZulu-Natal. And the organization's primary goal is to assist unemployed people to gain income-generating skills. I want to give you, Julie, a warm welcome. And thank you so much for joining us all the way from KZN. As part of her introduction, welcome, Julie, sorry about that. As part of her introduction, I do have a quick video from her organization about their success story. So if we could watch that now. Sorry, let me just get the sound on for you guys so that you can hear all of that.
There's still no sound.
Sorry about that. Let me fix that.
My name is a way of baskets, donuts,
Sorry about that. Just having a bit of a sound issue. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just getting our technician on board to help us with our sound issue. I realize that you're still not hearing sound, even though on my end it's playing. If you could just give us just a second or two, we really want to make sure that you hear the sound of this audio, because without it, there's no understanding of the audio.
You don't want to go on with someone else while this is happening.
Let's give it just 1 second. My IT guy is just helping me right now. Ladies and gentlemen, what we'll do is that we'll move on to the next presentation while we try to figure out the sound issue here. Bavik, could you stop working on my computer? Thank you. Apologies about that. We'll come back to the videos in a second while we figure out how to get our sound back on board. The next introduction is by Gidiboni Mulaudzi, who is a comedian with over 17 years of experience. He's worked on he's had multiple international appearances, including performances in South Korea, London, UK, Atlanta, Tanzania, Zambia, and many others. He is also has presented his stage work to multiple state presidents, which includes the 2 Nobel Peace Prize winners, Dr. Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And his work, what sets him apart from his peers is that his sets are based on everyday life, childhood upbringing, observations, and international current affairs. And I want to give you, Gidiboni, a warm welcome and thank you so much for being with us today. You're also giving us a video presentation, which also requires audio, but we'll come back around to that. But I want to give you, Gidiboni, a warm welcome and thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, thanks. I'm excited to be part of this career fair because every day you get people asking you, how do I become a comedian? How do I become an entertainer? And we're here to answer those questions, especially from the youth, given that some people are talented and you find that the unemployment rate in the country is big, and sometimes you're not born to be employed, but you're born to entertain, and that's your calling. So we're here to show you the ropes and show you how you can get to the industry. So I'm quite excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Gidiboni, and welcome.
Thank you.
gonna skip your video and we'll come back to it in a second.
Okay.
The last of our panelists who's joining us today is Nadia, who is the CEO of Moving Into Dance. She's a passionate go-getter who's worked her way within the Moving Into Dance organization, starting from education coordinator to being the director of education and eventually becoming the CEO of the organization. She has been nominated in several awards, including the Conscious Company Awards in 2019, the Standard Bank Rising Star Awards in 2015, and the Business Women's Association Regional Awards in the category of social entrepreneurship in 2015. And I want to give you, Nadia, a really, really warm welcome, and I look forward to hearing your insights. You also have a presentation for us, which I will now invite you to the floor to quickly go into.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Next slide, please. Moving Into Dance is essentially an organization that was founded in 1978. It was one of the first mixed race dance institutions in South Africa. And it started off in the founder, Sylvia Glass's garage, where at the height of apartheid, she would sneak youth into her home in the northern suburbs to try and train them in dance, and then to send them back to the townships to develop a form of recreation, but also to try and generate some income through this art form. So Moving Into Dance has always been about job creation. It's been youth focused. It's about empowerment. We're a not-for-profit organization. We also SAQA accredited, and we run a 3-year dance training program. Next slide, please. The organization is focused around the creative discipline of dance, and we work on a developmental basis. Next slide, please. In the sense that we select matriculants that are hugely talented in dance. We train them at full cost to ourselves. And from there, we select between 5 to 10 students to join a second year. And from there, again, another selection process between 3 and 5. And eventually we have our job creation wing, which is a professional dance company that is internationally acclaimed. Next slide, please. Dance is, while we focus on dance training, we also try and create a comprehensive program that focuses not just on performance, but on all the possible entities surrounding it, such as, basic anatomy, financial skills, fundraising, project management, basic financial skills, basic arts administration skills. Because we firmly believe that not everybody will be an incredible dancer or an incredible choreographer or an amazing dance facilitator, but everybody has, everybody that comes into our stable has a passion for the arts and wants to be a part of this industry. So we provide them with a myriad of skills that could, hone in on some of their strengths, and they could still, function or operate or find work in an industry that they are passionate about. Next slide, please. Moving Into Dance's, next slide, please. Moving Into Dance's professional dance company has tours extensively. They currently just finished a tour to Switzerland and to Belgium, and they're currently in France. Part of the employment nature, which is rare within the dance industry, which is very small in South Africa. Next slide, is that there aren't many opportunities to be employed full-time within the industry. So a lot of dancers embark on freelance work, which opens up, I guess, a broader scale of opportunity in terms of what they could access. So while you do train in dance, it's not necessarily always about dancing. Next slide, please. It's about embarking in theater engagements, doing commercial work, theater work. So it just really opens up the scope of the different things that you could do. Interestingly, just last year, we did the new commercial. We were part of the new commercial for Simba, which again used dance and also, allowed us to employ a lot of freelance artists, in addition to our own full-time employed dancers, to perform and earn an income. Next slide, please. Apart from moving into dance is a contemporary African dance company. We focus on a signature dance technique called Afrofusion, which is a blending of African music and rhythm with contemporary dance. And through our stable, we've produced 7 young artist winners for choreography, Centerbank Young Artist Winners. We've produced 2 recent international awards, the Courteous International Award for Choreography in Essen, Germany in 2016, the Hanover 33 Choreography Award in 2019 in Germany again. We've won Business Arts South Africa awards. Our training program has recently been recognized as one of the top performing arts training programs in the country. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Our motto through the organization is, next slide, is nurturing young leaders through dance. So it's not just about dancing, but it is about creative discipline in and through a very, very specific art form. Our engagement goes broader than just dancing in the studio. We engage a lot with schools. We work specifically recently since 2016, we work with special needs schools. We provide specialized training in inclusive dance, and we work twice a week pre-COVID in schools for youth living with disabilities. And we try and allow them this opportunity to be able to access dance and dance training within the ambit of their ability. So it literally is about taking away this image that we've all created about perfect body forms and revisiting this vision that, dance is available and accessible to anybody. Next slide, please. Next slide. So moving into dance is about creating opportunities. It is a tool to empowerment, and it's not just about, next slide, it is about teaching, next slide, and offering skills within the broader context of dance, and also making accessible work opportunities to youth that can create their own opportunities. Because currently in South Africa, we realize that there's such a lack of jobs that are in existence. And I think the only way for youth to re-envision a future is to be able to re-envision a way where they can create these opportunities for themselves. And this is exactly what moving into dance aims to do. Next slide, please. So essentially, next slide. So essentially, we want to be able to use education as a tool, teach dance in education, and allow the youth of South Africa to create the opportunities that they can in order to be gainfully employed within an industry that they could be very passionate about. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that really insightful presentation on the really important work that you do in your organization. I'm going to slide through the rest of your presentation quite quickly.
Thank you.
I hope that's not a problem.
Not at all. Thank you.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of our introduction. Which brings us, and I'm sure you guys have all noticed that 2 of our proposed or our panelists who were meant to be here, unfortunately are not here. They have sent their apologies, and that's Mokete as well as Nadine Mackenzie, who unfortunately due to unforeseen circumstances are not able to join us today. So I extend their apologies on their behalf to all of you. The next segment of our conversation will be as I mentioned earlier, the conversational part of our conversation, where I will be asking questions directly to the panelists. But I do want to give our IT guy just a moment because he's just fixing the sound at the moment, and I really want us to play that audio. Bavi, can you just indicate to me if we're good? Yes, I'll take that as a yes. Okay.
My name is Zanele Mhlongo. I live in Nzaleni Township. I weave baskets, doormats, tansy, curtains, many things. As I was finished at school at 25, I didn't work. My mom didn't have money to take me to the college. I want a bright future for myself, for my family. That's where Zikhulise came and opened door for me. Even I didn't have a cent to pay them, but they accommodate me, they teach me. Right now, I see my life is very different because I have now the money to take my children at school. The one, she's at the university because of what I did.
My name is Senzo Tselekulu from Mapuyen Reserve. I'm writing true stories. I'm writing about my life. So before I joined the Zikhulise program, my life, it was very hard. At the age of 24 years, I went to Transvaal. Other criminal came to hijack. I shot him. Afterwards, I went to prison. So I started to write novels there inside. Afterwards, I came out. I joined the Zikhulise because I wanted to know how to write, how to use computer, how to open your own job. Afterwards, I went to buy my own computer and typing my novels. So my novel was published, and now I want to make a move about it.
I started to realize that if I've got hands and brain, I can do everything. I am the person who I am. I stand up for myself because of Zikhulise.
Before I joined, other people, they didn't trust me. They took me like a criminal. So now my life is not so hard now. Zikhulise helped me to change my life.
We found that people are not only unemployed because there are no jobs available, sometimes they are sadly unemployed because they are unemployable. And I think this is where Zikhulise has made the greatest impact, and that is to teach people income generating skills, and they themselves can become employers. It's very rewarding to know that Zikhulise is changing lives for the better. We were able to help both Senzo and Zanele out of a really bad situation. It is really important for funders to realize that their contributions are changing lives. So we are immensely grateful to our funders, and we want to say a really big thank you to them for supporting us, because they are the ones that actually change the lives, not us.
The Comedy Central Daily Funny.
I think white people have so much money they don't know what to do with it. Case study number 1. A white guy paid another white guy 2 million rands for that other white guy. I'll repeat, white guy number 1. White guy number 2. 2 million rands for white guy number 2 to kill white guy number 1. How Brett Cable? You guys know that's what happened with Brett Cable. Paid another guy to him to kill me. And on the night that Brett was supposed to be shot, the gun did not go off. Brett Cable drove around Melrose Arch looking for the killers. Gents, it's me. That concept only black people. Picture a scene, black guy to another black guy, Aita, here's $2 million, please kill me. I can just picture him going, what's wrong with your man, yeah? What's wrong with your man, yeah? Then he calls Daily Sun, an article for you here. This guy, man. Case study number 2. You see, for us as black people, right, when we buy pets, we buy simple pets like cats and dogs, and we give our dogs obvious names. Like if a dog is black, Blackie. If a dog is white, Whitey. If a dog has spots, Spotty. If a dog bites people, danger. Danger. Now, white people have so much money they don't know what to do with it. A white guy from Delmas has a tiger as a pet. Some tiger called Panjo. Remember Panjo? And Panjo got lost. Because the owner was like, he's going to Eastern Mall. Panjo was like, I'm going hunting. Panjo got off the back, he fought 4 cars, whatever. It's like, I'm gone shopping, whatever. And the owner said, I kid you not, you guys can Google this. The owner said, if you see him, if you see Panjo, don't panic. It's a tiger. He said, don't panic, give him some chicken. Is it me or was that message directed to black people, eh? There I am at KFC. Sorry, can I please have a street wise too? Yeah, and an extra piece for Panjo. Yeah, just in case. There I am walking the streets of Soweto with a piece of chicken in my pocket, Baba. In case I meet Panjo, eh? Yeah. And what do you know? I get to meet Panjo. I'm like to my friends, gents, relax. I got this, relax. Punchy. You know what? Punchy.
Well, that was funny. I think I'm very funny, guys. Don't you guys think?
That's very
I'm
funny.
hilarious.
Thank you so much, Kiriboni, for that really light-hearted comedy skit, which I really enjoyed, and I'm hoping our audiences were able to hear that sound well enough. And also thank you, Julie, for your really great presentation on the important work that you and your organization does. Now, as scheduled, we'll go back into our regular scheduled programming, which is now the more conversational part of our session. And in this part, I'll be now engaging with you panelists. So if you could all have your videos ready and ready to engage with me, and I'll be just throwing some questions at you so that we can start opening up this conversation about having a career in our sector. Just give me 1 second to get myself back in. There we go. Okay, so the first question really I want to actually throw at you, Kiriboni, since we left it off with you. I want us to first start thinking about skills. What does it mean? What kind of skills do we need in our sector in order to succeed in our careers? And with you particularly, I know that as a comedian, you probably need a knack for making other people laugh. You need to have that skill. But other than that, what other skills have you had to kind of learn through your career in order to promote yourself and in order to progress in your career? What are some of the other soft skills that you've had to kind of pick up along the way outside of just being funny?
Okay, before I answer your question, Khontsene, currently there's a challenge, especially with our youth, you know, that this habit of people just wanting the easy way out. People want quick money, you know what I mean? Everybody wants quick money, you know. But now, just like with everything, the same thing with comedy, you need to be talented, obviously, because you can't get on stage if you don't have jokes. You need a commitment, you need to be grounded, and you need to work hard as well, you know what I mean? So without those three things, you'll never get anywhere, you know, because now if you work hard, if you write, like as a comedian, I write every day, literally I write every day, you know, write. And then the other thing that you need to do as a comedian, because I've received a couple of messages on Facebook where people are asking, how can I be a comedian? How can I be a comedian? Here's the thing, as a person, if you want to achieve whatever you want to achieve, especially in the entertainment industry, you need to go out there and get it. You know, there's comedy nights, comedy shows happening all over Joburg, all over Cape Town, all over Devon, all over Polokwane, all over Rustenburg. You need to get up and go to those comedy shows and say, hey guys, here's my 5 minutes, I've been writing, can I get on stage? You can't be a comedian if you are forever on Facebook asking comedians, how do I become a comedian? You know? So now, and you need to write, because now when you write every day, if you write 5 jokes a day, you are likely to have at least 1 good joke. So now, if you write every day for 7 days, you have 7 good jokes. You know what I mean? So now that's that. So it's basically you need to be committed, you need to be focused, and you need to work hard. There's nothing else. You know, without those things, you'll never ever make it. I'm sorry, but you need to work hard. You need to be committed, and you need to write as well as a comedian.
Thank you so much, Kiriboni. I definitely can relate to the element of working hard, of putting yourself through the motion of actually doing the work to get yourself successful. Outside of just having the bare minimum skill of being able to do the work.
Yeah, because the more you write and the more you perform, the more you become better. I guess with everything, you know, like, you know, if you write more, you perform more, you're able to proceed more. Like, for example, Trevor Noah. Like, Trevor Noah is hard work. Trevor Noah can switch off his phone and work on 1 joke for the whole day. He still does it even today in America, you know what I mean? So now it shows, like, you know, if you work hard, the doors open up, you know, because you're working hard. You know, I'd love, I wish that our youth can drill that into their heads. Like, you know what, in whatever you do, if you work hard, you will succeed, you know. But now here's the thing, the people that work hard are always on top. They're the cream of the crop. But those that don't work hard will always be at the bottom. That's basic mathematics with everything.
Yeah, definitely. Those are some really, really wise words, Kiriboni, and I do hope that the youth who are here are taking that in. And I want to ask the same question to you, Totelwa, about what are the skills needed in your sector, in the visual arts as a curator? What are some of the skills that you've had to pick up and learn along the way to succeed or to progress in your career path?
I think one of the things that I've learned, actually, not at the university, I've studied fine art course, but I wouldn't say that that is the best way, or that is the one way, basically, of becoming a curator. You know, I mean, the term curator has been used by a lot of people in different industries, right? But a lot of things that, one thing that I've learned is to be able to, you know, to pick up administrative skills through projects that I did. You know, I've picked up, I think administrative skills are quite important if you're gonna be a curator. And just being able to, and it also helps you to define what kind of curator you want to be. And also for me, having to meet people as well, it kind of helped, and how working in different environments, of course, and interacting with the creatives as well, because I am in the creative sector. So I think that for me, it's very important to be able to identify, and also maybe for me, going through art school has helped me in a sense that I was able, even in my final year, to actually know that I was not going to be a practicing artist, right? Even though the training is for me to become an artist. I knew from then that I really wanted to do something that is more whether it's art writing or making exhibitions. But yeah, so those are the things that when you have to have a drive to want to learn, to actually find ways basically of improving, whether you find a mentor, attending exhibitions or workshops or anything. You have to see any, you know, like activities as a kind of an opportunity for you to get to where you want to be, you know. For me, being a curator is really not a destination. I'm not there yet. I think it's a process. You're always working to become a curator. I'm working to become a curator. I'm not there yet, right? And I don't think I will eventually get, or I would get there. It's just like, it's a work in progress, you know, there's no destination. That is how I define my my career or where I'm at. So it's very important to kind of have those, to be open-minded, to be open to learning, to engage, to even try and meet people that you also like, who are filled as you, whether through university, whether just like through any events that you can think of, like exhibitions that you can attend, basically. Yeah, so to be around people that are in the same field that you want to be part of. And like Gedibon was saying, practice, you know, like for me, also being a curator requires you to write, right? So it also wants you to read, which is also something that I think people are very scared of. They don't want to read, and you can't just read material that's within the arts. You have to be like really aware what's happening around you, you know, the world around you. So yeah, that would be my sort of like answer to that.
Yeah, I think you touched on some really important points. You very briefly talked about how you're getting an education, or you started an education, but it's not necessarily the only thing that makes up building a career. You've also spoken about meeting and networking, which is something that we'll go into in a moment. But while we're still on the topic of skills and the skills that we built, we know that as a professional in the arts, you need to have a set of skills on one hand. But on another hand, in order for us to build our community, in order for us to ensure that the arts remains alive, there's also a need for a transferal of some of our skills to others, you know, a transferal of knowledge to others, so that younger people, incoming people, can also do some of the important work that you're doing. And I want to ask you, Julie, particularly in your organization's work, Zikulise, which does a lot of work in uplifting others. What are some of the lessons that you've had to learn when you're in the process of upskilling and transferring some of your skills to others? What are some of those lessons that you've picked up, which are important in ensuring, you know, a longevity in your organization, and ensuring that people that come after you can maintain this and sustain your organization's work, which is quite important?
Very important to us at Zikulise is to upskill people that come through our programs. For example, some of our trainers are former trainees who came. But I just want to add in something here that is really important, because I also come from a business background. And Kitty Bonnet was talking about quite a lot of the issues that are so important, whether you are in the arts or whether you are in a business environment. These things, all these things apply. And he was talking about working really hard. So you need to know that that's going to be part of your life as long as you are involved with what you are involved with. But it's also about doing what you are passionate about. It's no good following somebody else's plan for your life or something like that. You need to pick whatever it is in the arts or wherever, is what are you passionate about? Because only if you're passionate about something can you put in all the hard work, the long hours. And what I learned mostly from my business, and this is what we impart to our trainees, is it's all about perseverance. You are going to fall, you are going to fail, but you actually need to stand up again, dust yourself off, cry a bit, but carry on. And that's one of the most important things, I think, in any discipline. You will come against problems, you will have hardships, you will have ups and downs, but if you are passionate about it, you need to carry on, and you need to work smart as well. Hard, and you need to work smart. So that's about it. So that's what we do with Zikulisa. You know, every part of our training that we give, whether they're doing beading, traditional beading, or hair braiding, as your braids look beautiful today, is business management training. So I think any art form, if you are in dance or if you are in fashion or anything like that, you really, really need to know the business side of managing a business. And so that's really where we go. And then as far as longevity of Zikulisa is concerned, I'm sure it'll continue long after I'm not there anymore, because it is such an important, essential service, particularly here in KwaZulu-Natal, where the unemployment is a lot higher than the percentage that you mentioned earlier on.
Definitely. I think your organization is doing really amazing work. I want to rope you in, Clement, now, particularly as a social entrepreneur, and the really important work that you do in promoting vulnerable groups, including women, youth, and people with disabilities. Do you often find that when we talk about the idea of skills and transferal of skills, do you often find yourself having to transfer some of your skills, having to transfer some of your knowledge to up-and-coming practitioners? Or are you finding yourself in a space where you're working with people who are already fully skilled, who are already fully there, who already have so much to give, that all you need to do is just collaborate with them to create projects or to extend some of the work that you do? What is it? Is it more of transferring of skills, or is it more of you're working with people who have the skill set already? Clement, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. What we actually do, or we actually operate in township, and also serving people who are living with disabilities, women as well as young people. So with that, we actually focusing more on mobilizing or recruiting as people who are experts in different fields, especially on the arts and cultural sector, where they come and actually provide different types of programs for our young people who are still less developed. Having realized that the cultural sector is very broad, we actually focused on specializing different types of multidisciplinary.
I might have lost Clement's sound there. I don't know if I'm the only one. Clement, are you still with us? Okay. I'm not sure what happened to Clement there, but we'll come back to you, Clement. There you are. There you are. Go ahead. Please continue your thought.
Yes. As part of my advice to other upcoming artists, I would say that it's very important for them actually to find institutions which are that can provide them with the relevant and appropriate skills to enhance their personal as well as their professional skills. I believe by doing so, they'll actually be able to enhance their skills and grow into this sector as well.
Thank you so much, Clement, for those insights. I want us now to shift gears a little bit and talk about something that Totelo touched on, which is about networking, meeting other people. And I want us to unpack whether or not networking plays a key role in sustaining or building our careers. And I want to draw you in, Lesiba and Erica. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of the fashion industry is that it's a quite close-knit community where who you know has quite an impact on how you progress in your field. And I want to know whether or not networking has in fact played a role in the way that you've built yourself within the fashion industry or not. Maybe you don't need to know that many people. Maybe you don't need to network or meet other people. How is it in the fashion industry? And I'll start with you, Erica. to ask about the importance of networking in your sector.
Hi, sorry, I'm just turning my camera off so that I can hear you better. With load shedding, we have all these quirks. You know, I think networking, I think maybe just to expand a little bit further, and I think fashion is often misunderstood as a singular kind of pathway from a designer to a consumer, and that's it. But I think fashion is as much an ecosystem, and getting to understand and know who's part of that ecosystem. We all depend on others in that ecosystem. So I think an incredibly important component is getting to know the different players in those ecosystems, because we do need to rely on them. And I'm speaking about stylists, photographers, makeup artists, manufacturers, farmers in terms of textiles and textile developments, retailers, influencers, consumer. You know, the ecosystem is just incredibly big, and touches so many different kinds of individuals involved. So even if it is at an event that you're speaking to somebody, you don't necessarily immediately know how they would be connected to a fashion system. So I think it's incredibly important. And then I think the other thing that I think is maybe a part of that networking conversation is also about taking pride in building that community, building those relations. So pride and support, I think, are incredibly important outwardly. So as you meet others, but also I think as others meet you, you know, so the ecosystem and the network and the nurture, I think is a very, very important, you know, a much underrated. It is not just who you know. I think sometimes fashion gets this terrible kind of reputation of being frivolous or flippant or abusive. But I think on so many other levels, in the same way that dance and Nadia, thank you for your presentation. It just really opened up how deeply it can reach people's lives. And so I think also to allow for the fashion industry to have those kinds of, we're starting to shift the narratives around heritage, we're starting to shift the narratives around who's included in fashion, shift the narratives around gender constructs, and fashion is doing that work. And so I think it's to expand the understanding of what the work is that fashion is doing. So yeah, thank you for that question.
Thank you so much, Erica, for those great insights into fashion. And Kiriboni, I note that you want to jump in quickly here. But before I let you in, I just want to quickly give Lesiba an opportunity to respond to this question about networking and whether or not it plays an important role. And then we'll come to you, Kiriboni, in your response to Erica.
Okay, if I may go. Yeah, I think networking is interesting, but also what you referred to as gatekeeping, and I think gatekeeping is across many industries, right? I guess I got involved within the arts through networking. Otherwise, because I didn't go through the normal channels of becoming an artist. I didn't go to Michaelis, I didn't go to Blitz. And it was through the people I knew that I eventually got myself into a gallery. But it was also, I guess, a matter of where you are located. And I think location is a big, big, big word that I guess we don't talk to as much. And I don't know how it is in fashion. I don't know what the difference, whether it's necessary more in fashion than it is in the arts, because I know the arts you can really you find yourself in a very secluded area, still communicate with your gallerist, and someone comes and sees your work. Whereas with fashion, it's almost as though, you know, especially if you're a young upcoming designer, visibility is so important. Sometimes visibility is the first point of contact between, you know, whoever might be in power or whoever might have that sort of influence on your career trajectory. You know, they might just like how you look. And it's not necessarily that, you know, you have a very strong portfolio. I mean, like, one thing I do miss about moving back from Cape Town, and now I'm living in Midrand, is those chance encounters that would have happened at a club, would have happened at, you know, a gallery opening, which, you know, when you are so far out of the city center, those opportunities to meet people at a whim are very you know, they kind of lack in sort of in lackluster. But yeah, I think what's also important is this idea of, you know, if we're going to look at the designer, but we're also going to look at the artist in a way, in that the person who speaks, the person who's on these panel discussions, operates or is a function within a wider network of individuals. You know, I'm the PR person, but my visibility helps, you know, my seamstresses get work, or, you know, my visibility helps whoever else that I'm collaborating with who is not necessarily yet, you know, recognized. You know, sometimes people do want to just kind of go and learn the ropes under some artist until they find their way in the industry, or until these chance encounters happen. And so that's where I think networking is very, very, I would say it's an interesting sort of space to work in, but you can go a lot further if you know how to kind of engage and speak to the right people, I guess, and be able to sell yourself, especially on, you know, like in those chance encounters. It's, you know, it's almost as though you need to rehearse a 1 minute line, but, you know, you also have to read the crowd, because you're not going to be very corporate and like very like, you know, club scene. So you got to figure out how your message can get across without being overbearing. But yeah, that's how I kind of see that networks functioning, you know, within the whole greater scheme.
It's, yeah, those are some really interesting points, and I definitely take that point of read the room wherever you are and where you're networking, adapt yourself, but continue to expose yourself to others, because it's so important. Giriboni, I want you to come in here, because I know you just said that you wanted to hop in on this conversation of networking. Please do take the floor.
All right. So I want to thank you, Erica. Thank you, Luciva. Those are interesting points. I wanted to talk about what happens in the comedy industry. It's going back to what I was saying earlier, that, you know, if you work hard, if you're funny. So if you're funny, it's easier to even network, because all the guys that are top comedians can see that Khonse is funny. It's easier for you as Khonse to say, hey, Kidi, got 5 minutes. It's like, oh, Khonse, you're funny, you know? So now, if you're not funny in the comedy industry, it's impossible to network, because nobody wants to talk to you, because we've never seen your work on stage. You know, it's the same thing. So now, I guess in every industry, especially in comedy, like, you know, if you're funny, everybody wants to network with you. There's a young comedian called Nkululeko Nkugza. It's from East Rand, you know. My kid is funny. He works hard every day, you know. And it's easier for Mashavela to give me a show. It's easier for me to slot him in at Soweto Comedy Festival. It's easier for everybody, because we know, you know, that kid is a hard worker. You know, I guess with all the youth that are watching this, I kid you not, I promise you, if you work hard, you know, if you write every day, it'll be easier for you to network. And without networking, it's close to impossible to get into industries. And I think there's a question here from Simbali asking that do we need qualifications, you know, within the industry? I think in comedy, oh, sorry.
I didn't want to jump. I saw that question, but I was actually, cool. The next segment was going to be about education, but go ahead.
Okay, so in comedy, you just need to be funny, because now, especially in the era we're in, the South Africans, you know, COVID, people are sad, people are stressed. If you can make somebody laugh, that's what we need, you know. But the more you do it, you're gonna get into that pro level where corporate South Africa will then book you, like McDonald's will then book you to come through and make them laugh for 4 hours. You know what I mean? So instead of comedy, I guess it's good to have the drama background. You can go to bed and get the drama background, because some jokes you need to act out a joke. You know what I mean? And some jokes, most of our jokes are based on real life experiences, childhood. So only I can tell jokes about how I grew up. So yeah, you know, in comedy, not necessarily. So yeah, that's it from my side.
Thank you so much, Kiriboni, for those insights. And I wanted to rope in, and Totala, I see your hand now. We'll come to you in just a second, but I just wanted to quickly rope in Nadine and also ask you, in the dance sector, how important is networking? How important is getting to know other people? How important is it to meet people to sustain or to progress in your career? Or is it not in the dance sector? How does it work in your sector?
Nadia, right? Nadine's not here. No, it's
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Nadia. I'm so sorry. My apologies.
I think networking is incredibly important, especially in an industry that thrives more on freelance work as opposed to full-time, dancers that manage to get employed full-time. So it is really about knowing what opportunities are out there, being able to access those opportunities and access them well. I just wanted to fall back on something that Kiriboni has said a few times, and obviously he's very passionate about it, and I completely agree with it, is as an artist, talent only gets you so far. And I think there's this misconception that I'm talented and I can do anything. And that talent has a very limited range in terms of your frame of reference. And I know that you're coming to the education conversation just now, but I think that's where the education component comes in. That, you could do so much with your body as a dancer or as a comedian or as a performing artist. But how you extend that knowledge is completely contextual in terms of what skills or knowledge you lack and how to access that. And I think, just in terms of the youth, hard work goes far. It goes really, really far. And, I think we need to step back and realize that, as youth, we all need to have a teachable spirit, a spirit of learning, and a spirit of hard work. Like, the world owes us nothing, and you have to work hard to get what you want and get far in life. So that's pretty much what I want to say there.
Some really, really wise words. And just to repeat, you said teachable spirit and spirit of hard work. That's really, really important and wise words. Totelo, I see your hand is now down, but I was actually going to rope you in now on this conversation. And I just want to check in. Do you still want to hop in on the conversation of networking, or can I move on to?
Yeah, okay. I want to refer to both the first question about skills and this one about networking. And I just wanted to say there's no blueprint, right? And that allows you to be able to create something that is uniquely you, right? Because you don't have a handbook that is already out there that you can follow. So it's very important that, yes, I think the curator that you become, the artist that you become, the dancer, the comedian, it's a result of who you are. It's a result of the fact that you're basically writing your autobiography through the work that you do. So that is very important, that when you become, if Lesiba is somebody that you would like to work with, that it shouldn't you shouldn't imitate Lesiba, you shouldn't try to be Lesiba, but you should try with his talent or with his guidance or mentoring, use that basically to form your own character or your own identity or your own practice out of that. So that's something that I wanted to say. But also networking is a skill, it's a soft skill that you learn. It's not easy, it does not come easy. You don't get to learn this from university. That's why I said you can become a curator, but identify what kind of curator you want to be. But also it's not something that you can say, yes, now I am a curator. For me, I don't think I would get to a place where I'm saying, yeah, I am a curator. But it's kind of like a work in progress, right? Yeah, I just wanted to add that part.
Well, I think that's a good segue into, as you were saying, that network is a soft skill that we don't necessarily learn at university. And now I want us to talk about education. Is education important in our careers? Is education key in our careers? And I know, Kiriboni, you said that in comedy sector, you don't necessarily have to get a particular kind of education, but you can have the really great skill of being funny and the ability of connecting with people through the way that you tell your jokes. But I want to, come on in.
Oh yeah, I wanted to say that so the other challenge that Black artists mainly struggling with that I'd want the youth to avoid is that with education, so you need to know how to run a business, you know what I mean? So business management, would come in handy, because I was having this conversation yesterday. We were doing a show in 4 weeks with this comedy promoter called Mora. He said, with most Black entertainers, because we don't focus on the budgeting, the planning of the actual event, we end up losing money because we are blinded by our passion for the arts. I don't know if it happens in the fashion industry and in Nadia's industry, which is the dance industry, So I think education that says that you need to know how to run a business so you can make money. Because now if you're running a business without knowing how to make money, you're gonna run at a loss. You're not gonna make money. When you don't make money, it's frustrations. When you're frustrated, it leads to stress, So I think we need to know how to run businesses, You need to know how to plan, but you know that this is how much I have, this is how much I need to stage a comedy show, this is how much I need to do a run at the gallery, this is how much I need to go to the New York Fashion Festival. Because when you know that this is how much I have, this is how much I have, So yeah, education as in business side of things within the comedy industry. But being on stage, being funny is talent, and it's like I said, it's hard work. Thank you.
Definitely. While we're on the topic of education and the importance of education, Lisiba, I want to rope you in here. You managed to get to be the recipient of the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation Scholarship, which I'm sure played a really big role in ensuring that you can get your master's degree. Are you able to tell us about the importance of education in the progress or the sustainability of your career? Has it had an impact in any way getting that master's degree or not? What kind of role do you think education plays for you in the fashion sector?
Sorry. Just want to put my phone on silent quickly. Okay. It's interesting because I think this is some of the questions of actually, or these line of topics that myself and Erica kind of speak to in terms of, fine, I have that sort of fashion background that kind of laid the foundation for what I would be doing in my master's. But if you go a little bit further back, I wanted to be an architect, and I decided, I wanted to do woodwork, and then they canceled that whole subject, and so I took up history. And I think that was a pivotal point in my career trajectory, even though it was, it was still too early to kind of say, but I could understand context of worldly events or historical worldly events that were happening. And so when I do my work, I'm also taking into cognizance of world history, I'm taking into cognizance fashion history. And, if I'm operating from the perspective of theater and performance, I'm drawing on both elements and seeing how things align. And therefore, then that's where we can start talking about issues of decoloniality, because when we talk about decoloniality, we're talking about an idea where timelines are not seen as singular. It's not just a colonial idea of how fashion progressed from whenever it was deemed fashion until now. We're looking at other timelines that are, we call it fashion from the African continent, because it's fashion that have existed before colonialism. And so that couldn't have happened without my exposure to that education. But also I went to Tshwane University of Technology and I studied fashion there. And so if anybody knows Tshwane University of Technology, its campus is, I think, one of the most beautiful campuses you could find in South Africa, because all of the arts are on that one campus. So there's design actually as well. I know UCT doesn't have design on the arts campus, but with Tshwane there's design as well, which create this melting pot of creative exchange. And it doesn't necessarily, that exchange makes up for the shortfalls that the curricula doesn't give you. And therefore, in the end, I found myself actually playing around with performance for my final fashion presentation. It didn't go down. I won't get into the details of that, but I think I was starting already to kind of think of myself as an interdisciplinary sort of creative individual due to my exposure to other individuals, due to seeing what they are doing in their final presentations and thinking about bringing that into my work. And by doing that, the lecturers do encourage this idea of working with one another, but I think there's so much bureaucracy within the education system that doesn't allow, and it's hard for an educator to encourage the kids, even though our educators try, but I think there's a mandate that blocks that sort of cross-pollination. And I think maybe the next melting pot was Cape Town for me, in that, then there's now a wider network of individuals. And I think one other area that is very important that doesn't get talked of a lot is self-taught. And I know it's not represented underneath the rubric of education, but it is as equally as important, because you kind of see from the perspective of a self-taught artist different things and different approaches that can help you with your artistic process as well. And I think a lot of self-taught artists as well are individuals who are exposed to a form of skills training, whether it be banking sector, whether it be engineering, that they did beforehand, before they decided to be creative. And you find those creatives kind of, doing well administratively and actually last longer than the one that decided to be an artist from the get-go. So yeah, that's an interesting sort of idea in terms of how education can work. I mean, that's one front, and I think Eric could answer on the other aspect in terms of what we're doing as AFRI and why we're looking at the digital as a form of decolonial education.
Erica, do you want to jump in there and just take on that conversation?
I think what Lasiba said was really, really true, and he touched on so many points. But I think one thing that I would say over and over again about education is it is about investment in the self. Whatever time you spend educating, you're actually investing in yourself. So the time that you spend in reading, the time that you spend in reflection, the time that you spend in upskilling, these are self-investments. So it's interesting how Lasiba was talking about self-taught, but I'm taking it a step further. Education is an investment in the self, and it is an ongoing investment in the self. Whether it's formal education or whether it's Google, or whether it's friends, or whether it's trial and error. These are investments into the self. And without investing into yourself, the possibility for growth and the possibility for excellence is not possible. So, but yeah, I'm very aware of the complex conversation. So yeah, thank you.
Definitely. Maybe just picking up on that conversation about self-taught. I want to rope you in, Clement, particularly you as a social entrepreneur. I find that entrepreneurs are probably one of the best self-taught people everywhere. They learn and teach themselves so many new skills in order to build their businesses. And I want to ask you whether or not, education is a thing for you, or are you more of the mind that as an entrepreneur, it's probably better to self-teach yourself, through either networking, through learning through other people, mentorship, various kinds of ways of teaching yourself? Or do you think that education is a thing to be or to have as an entrepreneur? What are your thoughts on that, Clement? Clement, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I think education is actually the key, special on the creative sector. It is very important for us as artists to actually get enroll into, even though it may be short courses, those crash courses, to actually enhance your professional skills. So, and also, as we all know that now we need actually to use the advancement and the advantage of the new technology. Most of us, we actually having those smartphones, which we need to actually use them for our own advantage. There are so many actually educational videos which are being uploaded daily. So self-taught is very important. Go through those videos, learn as much skills as you can, because I actually believe that without education, definitely it's going to be difficult for people to recognize you, you know.
Definitely.
So, yes, and also, yeah, just to add as well, there are also many organizations around like arts which are mostly focusing on arts. So it's very important for those upcoming artists to go and inquire about their services, to try as much as they can to at least improve their professional skills. Yeah.
For sure. I think your sound is coming in and out, but I think we managed to get the gist of what you're trying to say, really about enhancing yourself, enhancing your professional skills in every way possible. So Tell, I saw your hand was raised. Did you want to make a contribution to this conversation on education?
Yes, Khunse. I like listeners, you know, when you raise the thing of self-taught, and I started thinking about these non-informal spaces, you know, like I'm thinking about Community Arts Project, which is like one of the oldest spaces that was open in Cape Town for particularly for Black artists, right? I work for Bag Factory, which is another institution that is very old, that has been in existence for more than 30 years. But also I wanted, because education for me is very political, you know, it's education. I mean, the stigma attached to non-informal spaces or informal spaces, educational spaces in South Africa. You know, right, that especially within the arts, if you're not from Michaela's, if you're not from Birds or Rhodes, like your chances of making it, you know, you're gonna have challenges along the way, right? Especially if you want to be a gallery artist or show your work or being represented by an artist. So I think education, I'm always thinking about, especially now with the spaces in you know, those schools in the villages, what happens, especially now with COVID, like what happens to them when they don't even have proper infrastructure to have internet, right? And now we're talking about online learning. So I think we need to kind of, as we're thinking about education within the arts, as we're trying to kind of produce and you know, this kind of decolonial practices, we have to think about practices, you know, decolonial practices within education, which is important. And I think so for me, education is such a trigger thing, because having a degree in fine art, which I got in Bloemfontein, it's very insignificant, honestly. I don't think I would have been where I am right now if I only had that degree, if I did not go and do curatorship at Michaela's, right? If I did not work maybe for Zeiss Mocha. So we have to kind of look at education, especially the spaces that have been there for Black people, because the kind of education that the Black child in Eastern Cape is completely different from for a child who's here in Joburg, who's going to a Model C school, right? And it's important for us to be able, as we're doing our work, and I really love the Lesiba and Erica's project, you know, because, and the question for me would be then, how do we translate that information for a kid in primary school who's in Limpopo, who's at Eastern, you know, all these kind of like government schools that really don't have art curriculum. So I want to talk about that. You know, I just want to raise this topic of education being also a divisive method, or within it, or the ideology or the principles within our education system. They're very, very colonial. They're very discriminating against Black bodies particularly. So it's important that as we're working, as we're creatives, we also think about how do we take this information? How do you take your, you know, how do we take what Nadi is doing, what Lissima is doing? Julie, I think you are doing that, because I think the work that you're doing is within the kind of like rural area of KZN. So the question for us is to like, how do we take this information really and take it back to the places where art does not exist, right? Yeah, so I'll just end.
Yeah, thank you so much for those insights. And it's a really good segue to you, Julie, who your hand is also raised. This idea of inclusivity, of including people in rural areas, of ensuring that they also come on board, of educating them, of transferring that skill again. How is that working out for you? Do you want to also make a contribution to this conversation about education, particularly in KZN, in a more rural setting? How does that work for you there?
Yes, I would really like to do that. But before I do that, I just wanted to say again, it's about self-investment. Education is about self-investment. I thought those were great words, because if you want to become an entrepreneur, which would be an artistic entrepreneur or whatever, you need to look at yourself and how you can educate yourself. And to tap into what you're saying about the rural areas, that's super important to us at Zekulisa, is because the greatest poverty is out in the rural areas. And on some of your slides that I saw, you were talking about how do you actually establish things in the rural areas, or take the arts into the rural areas. Because, you know, just thinking of KwaZulu-Natal, there are traditional events. So a lot of like beautiful necklace that you're wearing there, that's might have been made in KwaZulu-Natal, I don't know. But that's the kind of thing that we're very aware of, the loss of traditional culture. Beading is a little bit of a dying art, unfortunately, and it is such a beautiful thing, as well as ceramics, producing those gorgeous pots. So that's what we do. And the vast majority of our trainees come from the rural areas, because Mpangeni is actually quite a small town. And although we're connected to Richards Bay, the greater rural area is from Mpangeni towards Melmoth and Shawi and those places. And so those folks come from there, and then they establish themselves back into the rural area, bringing those skills into the rural area, but also empowering people, because a lot of the trainees actually become teachers themselves. And then they pass on these skills, like that necklace, to the youngsters that are sitting around doing nothing. And just recently, this week, we had a board meeting, and one of our board members said that she's devastated by the poverty levels that are out in the rural areas, where the youngsters are actually getting into drugs and getting into alcohol and getting into all sorts of stuff, because they've got nothing to do and they've got no hope. And that's the big thing. If the arts and the culture and everything can be revived and be taken into the rural areas, and people can see, hang on, I can actually make a living, a decent living, out of something that's in the art field. I think that is super important, that we kind of move a little bit of the focus away from the metros into the rural areas, wherever they are in South Africa.
Definitely. Really some important takeaways that you brought up there about inclusivity and bringing in communities. who I feel rural areas have a really wealth of skill that just needs to be tapped into and exposed.
They do.
They really, really do. And you're right, this necklace does actually come from KZN. You're quite accurate on that. I just want to quickly, Nadia, I see your comment here in the chat, which touches on what Otelo was talking about education being political. And you, Nadia, say that indeed education is political, but that is also the beauty of the arts, where narratives around social justice can be voiced and accentuated. And that's really key in the work that we do in the arts, is that the arts are able to help us have those uncomfortable conversations, whether it's about politics, whether it's about race issues, whether it's about land issues, whatever the case may be. But the arts is a good vehicle that we can use to unpack some of those really dense and uncomfortable conversations. Lisiba, and I see we're really running out of time, and there's so much that I want to unpack here, but I want to give you, Lisiba, a chance because your hand is up, and then I'm going to ask one last question, and then we're going to go into a round of questions from our audience, because I do want to hear from our audience to hear what they have to say. Lisiba, do you have anything you want to contribute?
Yeah, very small. And I guess it's a combination of what we mentioned before regarding networking and education, and it's kind of said to kind of have to go backwards after we expanded into this idea of rural, but alumni is an important sector of institutions that I think vary from institution to institution. TUT alumni are not necessary. For me, I felt like the TUT alumni is not as powerful as the UCT alumni in terms of your career afterwards, the jobs that you get. People will find out about you. People look for you. I think it's more, depends on what institution you go to. So I think as I was thinking about it, and as Julia had been speaking about rural spaces, I'm thinking about what is that sort of space, or what is that alumni sort of, or what does an alumni look like in those sort of rural spaces? Is it an idea of giving back? Is it an idea of artist collectives? And what is the function of those alumni or people who've come from those communities? And how much are people actually investing back into the spaces that they come from?
Thank you so much, Lisiba, for those insightful contributions. There are so many questions that I want to ask you guys, but we're fast running out of time. And what I want to do now is perhaps ask all of you to start thinking about what kind of advice, what kind of takeaway point would you be able to give to people who are listening here. But before I go around the table and ask you about that little takeaway point, I want to ask my colleagues, Rebecca and Lorraine, who have been overseeing the comment section and looking at what our audiences are talking and engaging with us, and to see if there's any questions that we'd like to pick up. Starting with you, Rebecca, from a Facebook perspective, are there any comments or questions that have come in for our panelists that we can quickly engage with at the moment?
Hi, everyone. Yes, there are questions. There's just a few questions. The first question is from Nicola. How do you get funding in the fashion industry? The second question is from Tabang and Colin. And they ask, when is the national bursary application opening? The third question is from Shezi Breezy. And she's saying, I am a theater practitioner. Is it possible for me to get empowerment assistance with the Kulisile community development? About that, I am currently assisting Vezabantu for people living with disabilities. I am a script developer and a director. I'm slightly losing interest due to the fact that there is no income, no stipend. Please help. That is the last question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So just to reiterate those three questions, I'll start with the middle one, because the middle one is really directed at the NAC, asking about when our annual local bursary call out is going to be. It is a little bit delayed because at the moment we're focusing on getting the outcomes for the call for funding out, but we are hoping to have that call for local bursaries out hopefully by the end of the year. We will communicate accordingly across our social media, across our websites, if those timelines changes. But we're hoping that that call will be out before this year closes. The first question, which was from Nicholas, was, how do you get funding in the fashion industry? And I guess that's directed to you, Lesiba and Erica. Can you tell us, are there funding opportunities in the sector?
Erica wants to speak, but I mean,
you are the first to unmute.
I can only speak to my experiences, and so I know that, you know, obviously there's fashion weeks that you can do, there's competitions that you can do that have prize money. So Fashion Week, SA Fashion Week has an annual competition. I'm not sure if it's biannual. There's now the Twig Awards, but then obviously it's about you already having established a company that is doing fashion that's focused on green fashion. But then obviously there's fashion councils, Cape Town Fashion Council is there, there's CEDA. CEDA actually gave me the money to display my work at Design Endeavor back in 2014. And there's also the DTI that you can always approach if you're looking for funding. But I think there's also, it depends on the type of fashion or what part of the, which part of the industry that you're trying to kind of look to engage with, because there are different types of funding bodies depending on scale. So I'm just really talking about small scale SMEs at this point, but there are bigger people that ITC, I think they IDC do large scale work funding as well. But I mean, I've also been thinking about whether we do enough of that sort of venture capital sort of seeking within fashion, and I don't know if we're doing enough of that, but that's maybe something that we should probably look into as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Lesiba. Erica, do you have any insights on funding opportunities in the fashion sector? I think we might have lost Erica. Okay, that's all right. The third question that was brought up there by my colleague Rebecca was really directed to you, Julie. They were asking, they're a theatre practitioner and they work in set development and they're a director, and they want to know whether there's any empowerment opportunities within your organizations. Do you work with theatre practitioners in any way or another? Because I know that a lot of your focus is a little bit on craft, but do you work with people within the theatre sector? Are there any opportunities for collaboration there?
No, unfortunately not. Well, we can always grow into that field because that's what Sekulisa does, we grow. But at the moment not. We focus very much on empowering people as, you know, the other skills that we teach are textile development, for example, and as well as baking training, food, working with food. So we pretty spread out as far as our offering is concerned. And, you know, we can always talk to people about other avenues which we can explore.
Definitely, definitely. While we're on that, I see there's a question from Cassie, and Lorraine, if you could just ready yourself with your questions in a moment. This question from Cassie is about whether this event is a networking opportunity. Definitely it is. And she asked whether she can get in touch with any of you. Definitely yes. We've done our best when we put out the biographies of all of our panelists. We've tried to tag them where possible so that you can reach out to them either through social media. But in places where you feel that you can't reach them, I definitely do encourage you to come email me directly or anybody in the NAC, and we can definitely put you in contact with any one of these panelists to ensure that this conversation can be furthered, that more works of collaboration can happen out of this conversation. Lorraine, in the last 5 minutes, I see it's 2 o'clock right now. In the last 5 minutes,
there are so many
questions. There are a lot of questions.
Yeah, people are just so excited. Mamudisa Mainula wants to know what opportunities are there for taking up dance and ballet in particular as a profession post-matric. My sister was involved at MID in Newtown, but operations have since stopped due to the lockdown. Second question, Benedict Mabute wants to know what qualifies an expert in our sector. Is it defined by funding agencies or academic accreditation? or immense experience in the field with a profile to prove it besides talent. Cassie is the busiest, I think, on all our platforms. There was a question directed to Nadia by Adrian, who says, my dance club is in existence for 18 years. There was no formal qualification in line with art. Most members studied something in the field of administration and IT. How do we get to the point where moving in dance is at, and what is the possibility of working with moving in dance in the Central Karoo? Galaxy A32 says, greetings, my name is Iskado Mkondo. May I please get in touch with fashion designers because I'm a model with a disability. I also do advocacy for the rights of children. They left their contact details there as well. Anonymous, I am from a poor former homeland of Kwandebele area, where arts in general is completely not regarded as business. Hence, it is not enjoying any financial support from government and private sector, in spite there's a number of performing artists, beats, crafting, and so forth, despite government having acknowledged it among the few cultural heartland in the country. And Lerato wants to know as well, she's from Limpopo. How can NEC help our artists living with disability? Because I have an organization, South African Disability Centers, that's transferring different skills to them, but we lack funds. And there's just a lot more questions now that we're at the end.
I'm going to stop here. I'm going to stop there because I can see the questions are thick there. There's quite a lot. But just to quickly recap on these questions that you brought up, we'll start with you, Nadia, because there's questions related to dance, one from Adrian, and I didn't take the first name. But the first question was, what opportunities are there within the dance sector if somebody's coming out of matric and they're thinking about going into dance? What opportunities are there? Where can they go? How can they get into the dance sector? And the other question from Adrian, who has a dance club where their members mostly don't have formal education, they have more informal qualifications. How can they get to working with you, with your organization moving into dance?
Okay. All right. So the first question in terms of just accessing dance opportunities, moving into dance, will be auditioning for our training program in January. So if, they could just drop us an email at admin@midance, one word, midance.co.za. I'll put it on the chat just now and we'll send information. Adrian, I sent you my email address. Just drop me an email and we can have a chat and just see what synergies there are and possibilities to collaborate. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much. The other question that came in was, what qualifies somebody as an expert in our sector? Do you need experience? Do you need education? What exactly do you need? And this is a question that any one of you could answer. So whoever that puts their hands up or raises their hand, more about accessibility and funding. Who was saying that? Lorraine. So what qualifies somebody as an expert? Do any one of you want to take up that question, which is quite broad? Kiriboni, I see your hand is up.
I think, if you are in your field for a long period of time, then you know what you're doing. I think you do qualify as an expert. I think I'm an expert myself. I'm just switching on the video. Okay. So it's like what I do now. So I train guys. I bring in comedians into aspiring comedians into the industry. I train comedians. So I think the more if you have experience and you are active every day on that field and you are giving back to the community and you are helping out wherever you can, I think we can call you an expert. I think so. I'm just winging it. So
yeah. I want to jump in and say, I'm just thinking about this, and again, for me, it's not an easy answer. But I'm remembering a book that I've read, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, and it spoke about 10,000 hours. If you put in 10,000 hours, then you are an expert in that field. I think so. I think if you've been doing something for a very long time, you are an expert. Yeah. Even though there are people, you know, who gets to define who's an expert or not. But yeah, I think, yeah, Kiriboni definitely are an expert. So
even the experts don't call themselves experts though.
What do they call themselves?
No, it's
if not
always a student. You're always a student. You're always in the process of learning. You're never really an expert. Otherwise, you wouldn't know everything.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, we'd be a millionaire, I guess.
Okay. The other question I'm going to quickly address myself. It was the two questions, particularly of the two people who came from more rural areas and wondering how they can get more support in those rural areas. Of course, there are organizations such as Julie's, Sikulise, who do a lot of work in ensuring that, you know, there's more accessibility, there's more knowledge sharing, there's more skill transference, there's activity within those rural communities. So definitely look out for organizations similar to Julie's. But as the NAC, I know that we've been doing quite a bit of work in terms of some of our road shows where we do go out into rural areas and we try to connect with as many people as possible to let them know about what the NAC has to offer, what funding opportunities are there so that they can jump on board. Unfortunately, with COVID, some of those road shows have had to be cut to kind of, you know, for safety reasons, but we are definitely looking at new and innovative ways of reimagining what this roadshow could be. What does it mean for us to reach out to people in rural areas? And I can definitely assure you that the NAC is working and thinking about building and sustaining those things further, those engagements with people in rural areas. And another thing that I know that we've done, particularly with this year's call for funding, is that we didn't just take online applications, we are taking manual applications, which I know for a lot of people in rural areas, access to devices and technology is quite a challenge. So being able to submit a manual application is something that we've reintroduced again. And we're hoping that's part of the work being done towards reaching and working with people in rural areas. Because as I said earlier, there's so much skill within rural areas of our country, and we really need to just tap into those and bring them you know, around the table, bring them on board to ensure that we get a bigger community, a more collaborative community, a more inclusive arts community. Ladies and gentlemen, we've really run out of time. I've even taken up 10 extra minutes of our scheduled time. And I really wanted to very quickly ask all of our panelists, we're going to go around very quickly around the table, quick word of advice, quick takeaway that you know, that you can give, that you can impart onto young practitioners who are listening today, who want to just take a quick takeaway from you. What can you say as an expert? I want to call you experts because I think all of you are experts. As a professional, as a thought leader and a cultural practitioner, what is the key takeaway that you can give in a sentence or two, very quickly? Let's go around the table, starting with you, Kutsunai. What key takeaways can you give us? What are your closing remarks?
Okay, I'll go. Well.
Yes, I was actually calling on you, Kutsunai.
Oh, me.
Yes.
You called me with a funny name.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I think right now, with technology, especially in our industry, I guess in all the industries, you can self-educate yourself using technology. YouTube, there's tutorials on YouTube how to write a joke. There's tutorials on YouTube how to perform a joke. There's a million videos of comedians doing comedy. So you can self-educate yourself on the skill or on the talent that you have, but you just want to improve on. So you have no excuse not to be what you want to be. And the National Arts Council is also here to lend a helping hand. So those days of just sitting down and say, there's no one that's here to help me, are gone. So if you don't want to be what you want to be, you have yourself to blame. So get up, work hard, and be what you want to be. That's it from me.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that, Clement. Let's come to you, Julie. What are your takeaways and your closing remarks?
Biggest takeaway that I can give anybody is never ever to be afraid of, to be afraid of failure. Because failure is a wonderful learning tool. As long as, sorry about this, as long as you can stand up again. actually embrace failure, because that is sometimes the best learning tool that you can have, because you'll never do it again, but you will have learned. And we just need to have a look at the big guys like the South African born Elon Musk. He failed a couple of times, and look, he's the world's richest man at the moment. So really, really never be afraid to fail.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Julie, for those wise words. Totelo, do you want to jump in here and give us your key takeaways?
Yeah, I think perseverance is one thing that I want to share with our audience, and also keep your head down and do the job. And it's not easy, you know, but just keep your head down and you know, and persist in your journey. Yeah.
Thank you so much, To, for those words. Lisiba, do you want to jump in?
No, no, I'm good. One of my mentors in the past was taught me something around red ocean and blue ocean strategies. Blue ocean is where everybody else is. Red ocean is where everybody isn't. Try and find out where the red ocean is, and that may actually open up routes for you to actually get noticed. I guess you get incorporated into the blue in some case, some future. But also prime your mind. I think the brain is one of the most, we always think our hands are the most important things, but it's actually our brains as artists. And as long as we can prime our minds and make it strong, and you know, always have positive affirmations. I know it's a very trendy word to be saying, but it's important to be able to, you know, prime your mind to be ready to take in all the good, so that's what eventually becomes your fuel, because nothing weighs you down more than negative thoughts and negativity and so on. So yeah.
Definitely. Clement, are you with us? Do you want to give us any key takeaways, any thoughts that you want to share with people who are listening?
Okay, I think the most important thing, it's very important for as an upcoming artist to actually focus. You need to focus. You don't have to be everywhere, and you also need to try your best to grow your network. Use the advantage of social media. You don't have to wait for the funding. Have other means to actually generate income to sustain your initiatives. So I think that's very important. So you don't have to wait for NAC to actually give you funding. Find other ways to, because it's a business at the end of the day. You must be able to find other strategies or plan B to generate income to sustain your initiative.
Thank you so much, Clement, for those contributions. I see we've lost Erica. She did say she was experiencing load shedding. So last but not least, Nadia, do you have any key takeaways that you want to jump in here?
Yeah, so I just want to say that, you know, just be teachable, willing to learn. Talent only gets you so far, and hard work counts for everything. And finally, protect your passion.
Really great ending point. Protect your passion. Ladies and gentlemen, I really want to give a big thank you to our esteemed panelists who've taken the time to be here with us, who've shared some really insightful thoughts and expertise and experiences in their various fields. A big word of gratitude to all of you for being here and for sharing all of that. I imagine that I took away quite a bit from this conversation, and I imagine that our audiences definitely did learn quite a bit from this conversation. It was really exciting to hear all of your different perspectives. I also want to really thank the NAC team and DCF team who are working in the background to ensure that this session went more or less as smoothly as possible. Thank you so much. And of course, a big thank you to our audience who are joining us on Facebook, who are here with us on Zoom. Thank you for taking the time of your Thursday afternoon to joining us, for being part of this conversation, for contributing your thoughts. I know there's so many other questions that we didn't touch on. There's so many other things we could have engaged on, but because of limited time, we did the best that we can. And I think it was quite fruitful. And I want to thank you all so much for taking the time to be here with us. And I want to wish you all a blessed day and afternoon ahead. And I hope you enjoy your weekend. And we look forward to having even more engagements like this with the sector. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Same to you.
Thank you, Khunse. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
everyone. Julie.
Thank you,
Nadia,
Khunse.
Siva.
Bye, everyone.